Hi, and welcome to the Ballyhoobridge podcast. I'm your host, Heather, and I'm so glad you're here because I have a question for you. Do you ever feel stuck? Do you find yourself struggling to take the next steps in your business or even your life? Figuring out your next steps and having the courage to actually take them is the beginning of a road to self-discovery and healing. It's a journey that's uniquely yours that will uncover who you really are and help you show up as your true, authentic self, not only in life, but in business. In this podcast, we'll talk about marketing and business and spirituality and mindset. We're breaking it all down so you can build the life you truly desire and deserve. We're going to explain the jargon, clear up some misconceptions, and discover we're not all so different. We'll bridge the gaps between what you think you know and what you think you don't. Let's dive in. Hi everyone, we are back talking about business for today's episode. A couple episodes back, we talked about branding, and I actually wanted to dive into the information about logos a little more. I know I found that most people I know when they're starting a business, it seems to be one of the first things that they work on. I think I'm like that too. I guess I feel like when I have that logo, it makes the business feel real and legitimate and like I'm ready to get started. A little recap from our branding episode. One element of your brand is your brand identity, which is what we're going to talk about today. That's the elements that people see. That's going to be your colors, your design, and your logo. They identify you as a company, and they also distinguish you from other companies. Now, with that in mind, the logo doesn't have to be the very first thing that you do, but I believe it should be part of your planning as you're getting your business ready to open. Knowing who you are is an important step in your business. And once you know who you are, then you can tell others. I mean, how do you expect someone to work with you if you can't tell them who you are, right? Know this also, people run businesses all the time with just a name, and they never really develop a logo, or basically their name kind of becomes their logo. And this is absolutely possible. It's fine. I would ask though that if that is the choice that you make, still choose a font and a color at the very least that you want to use. That way you can use those all the time and create that consistency, which you're going to hear me say that a lot coming up. So the short answer is a logo is really up to you, but I find having one is very helpful. If you decide you're going to do it, there are some things I want to talk to you about for you to consider as you get started. First, a professional logo creates trust. It shows that you've put forth effort. It shows that you're polished and that you're serious and that you are a legitimate company. The look, the colors, the fonts, images, all these things come together to make up your look, and they should be consistent whenever you use your logo. Second, it's about recognition. A logo is the easiest way for people to recognize you. We've talked about this before too. You don't have to see the word Nike. You can see that swoosh and know it's them. That's because they're consistent in their branding. That swoosh doesn't change. The smile on the side of an Amazon box, I bet you recognize that too, even if there's not a name. The more your customer sees your logo, they start to associate it with you. So if you haven't created a logo yet and you're ready to move on to that part of the process, I have a few questions you may want to ask yourself as you get ready to move forward. These are questions that I actually ask of my clients when I'm working with them to create their logos. It helps you sort of understand what it is that you want and what it is that you're looking for. One of the first questions I always ask a client is, What does your logo need to say or convey? Is there anything in particular? And I guess maybe we should start there. Have you named your business? And when you're choosing a business name, it doesn't have to be, an on-the-nose name. It can be something with meaning to you. It can be a play on words, your name, the service you offer, the product you sell. It's really up to you. I just recommend that you find something you want to keep for a while. Choose something you like. Because the more you work on planning your business and getting it set up and getting it started, the more that name is going to become sort of ingrained in your mind. You may even kind of get sick of it after a while. But you have to remember, that's just you. Other people haven't heard it yet. But just think, that same repetition of it being in front of them is going to help them remember it, and therefore you. This is part of the consistency thing I'm always talking about. So now that we had the name established, the next thing I would ask is, are there any words that you need or want to place emphasis on? A recent example that comes to mind is I was working with a young man to help him build his online presence. Now, his business name is Whiskey Delta Hotel, which there's a whole story behind that. We'll talk about that another day. But the first thing I asked him was, do you need all those words to stand out? Do you go by all three all the time? Is that all important? And no, he went by whiskey when he was online. So that became sort of the prominent part of the logo. So there are things you can do with a design to draw someone's eyes where you want them to go first. So when we designed his logo, the word whiskey was where your eye went first. So even in the few seconds that they saw that logo, if whiskey was all they came away with, that was a great first start for them to start recognizing that logo. The next thing I always talk about is a tagline. And do you want to include one that sort of states who you are? Now, this is not to be confused with a marketing tagline, which is more of a marketing statement. This is more to explain what it is that you do, sort of beyond the name of your business. Now, there doesn't have to be a tagline. It depends on what your name was. Some companies use a phrase to explain what they do. Some never have. It could be something that you just simply use on your website, but not with the logo. For instance, with mine, I use mine with my logo. Underneath my business name, Ballyhoobridge, it says Intuitive Transformation Strategist, because that explains who I am and what I do beyond just the name of the company. Now, sometimes the name is obvious. If you're called Mary's Bakery, that kind of sums it up. Others don't. Coke is actually a good example for this as well. The original name was Coca-Cola, so you knew it was a cola. But of course, the new spin-off flavors don't say cola anywhere, I don't think. They just say Coke, because that brand is so established that you really don't need it. So just consider if you feel like you need some kind of explanation with your name. If you do, you want that to be something very clear and concise that conveys who you are very easily. Next, you're going to look at a couple of different things. You're going to look at your field or area of service. What demographic or age group do you service? And also beyond that, do you have any colors or images that you sort of wish to include or that maybe you already use? These can be very important as to how you sort of portray yourself. Let me give an example of this. Let's say you have a ballet studio. They may choose softer colors or things that tend to flow and have kind of an elegance like a ballet dancer would. And generally, they're probably going to appeal primarily to young girls. Now, this is not to say that boys don't dance and boys don't do it well, but this has typically been geared to females. And beyond just that part of it, the elegance of the font could give you this feel of elegance and movement, just like ballet has. But let's say they went in and chose red or orange, and their font was more of kind of a block style. That doesn't really represent what they're doing very well. But you could take that red or orange and the more block style that's a little harder, and that might be perfect for a hip hop studio. Maybe you have a plant nursery and you might use a lot of earth tones, a lot of browns and greens, and maybe your fonts almost have that sort of viney look as if it was a plant that was growing. The reason I'm bringing all this up and the reason these things are used is that all of those things together, the colors, the font choice, an image, they all come together to give an impression of who you are and what your business is. It starts to sort of draw your customer in and begins to tell your story. Even just the fonts can tell a story. They can convey strength or elegance or fun. Maybe they're serious or maybe they're playful. Fonts are actually a vital part of your design. And then when you take all the things together with that font that you've chosen, the colors that you've chosen, and maybe a potential image, your client begins to form an idea of who you are based on all those elements. And they can do that before they ever read a word of your name. It is truly, our minds are conditioned based on what we see in society. I'm going to give you another example. This goes back to the client we talked about before. The font we chose for the whiskey word in his logo is one that's actually quickly associated with liquor. And you probably don't even realize this, but most of the time when you see the name of a whiskey or a hard liquor, it's probably a similar font. It may not be the same font, but they have a similar look. And your brain will automatically start to associate that with whiskey or some kind of hard liquor, and it'll almost do it subconsciously. Now, even though that's not what he's selling, it goes to his name and to his tagline for his podcast, which is a smooth shot of whiskey. So in this case, it was kind of more a play on words than the actual product, but it still allows the listener to sort of make the proper association. We actually went a little beyond that as well. There is actually a whiskey glass that's part of his logo. He also likes colors that kind of associate with older neon style decor, like orange and yellow and things like that. So we were able to take those colors that he liked and have the logo reflect a lot of him, but yet still look professional. And by the way, we'll put a link to the logo in the show notes. That way you can see the end result and kind of see where this all went. I didn't really touch on this enough, so let me back up for a second. You can also use images in your logo. They're not necessary, but a ballet studio may use a dancer. A seamstress may use a needle and thread. It just may be something nice that could sort of tie your look together. Another big tip I want to make sure you take with you, besides consistency, is simple is always better. A few seconds may be all you get to impact a potential customer. It's kind of like when you're driving down the highway and you see a billboard, you really only have a few seconds to sort of gather what's on there. You're scrolling Facebook. You're probably going pretty fast. You're flipping through a magazine and you just sort of see parts of things as they flip past you. Even somebody drinking out of a coffee mug, you don't get a good look at it. So those few seconds is often all you're going to get. So you need to make them count. So the simpler it is to read, the easier it is to remember. And it'll be kind of like that billboard. Each time you see it, they're going to remember a little bit more of what that logo looked like. And before you know it, they're going to know the logo and they're going to start to associate it with you. And when they want to work with you, they're then going to look for that logo to know, hey, I found the right person. There's their logo. Now, this is one that a lot of people don't think about, I think because they're primarily working online. So their logo is primarily seen on a computer. However, you need to make sure your logo can be just as effective as a one color image as it is in full color when it's on that computer screen. Because consider this, how will your logo translate to other mediums? Do you know what that means? Okay, think about what are the different places you're going to use your logo. If you're mainly using your logo online and choose this beautiful gradient where it changes different colors of gold or silver, and it's stunning and it's lovely and it works. But what if you decide to have that printed on a coffee mug to give to your customer, or on a t-shirt, or on a sweatshirt? Depending on how it's printed, that look won't carry over to a printed product. Silver just becomes gray. A lot of times they can't produce that gradient look where it's so many different colors of gold. They just can't reproduce that in print. Again, it depends on how it's being printed, but for the most part, that can't be done. Also, depending on how you're having it printed, you may actually get charged per color. So if your logo has 10 colors, let me tell you, that gets really pricey really fast. So that's something to think about. As you choose your colors, you can do what's called a color palette that you can use across all of your graphics. So let's say your logo is gold and purple. Mine's gold and purple. Then it should be always the same gold and purple, your gold and purple. So you could say, hey, I'm okay with this logo being printed just in the one color of gold, but it needs to be your gold. You could choose to say, yeah, it can just be purple. The whole thing can be purple, but it needs to be your purple. Then what if you get in a situation where, you've been offered an opportunity to have your logo put in a magazine, but it has to be all black and white. Well, in this case, most likely what's going to happen is your logo will be the one color of black, or it will be all gray. Now I'm going to throw one more at you. Sometimes you'll put your logo on something that's maybe your purple, and you do what's called reversing it, which means it's all white. Still the same logo, but it's all white. You haven't changed the color. You've just basically removed the color. But what did you notice about this? It stayed consistent. It always looked the same. It always used the same colors that you've chosen. Consistency. We've said it before. I'll say it a lot. Same logo, just using your different colors. And you always want to be consistent. A little bit more about those colors. Some people will create what's called a color palette. And basically this is some colors that complement your main colors. And people may give you those to use so that you have more options. You'll still maintain the consistent design, but you may use those complementary colors at times. A good example of when this is a good thing to do is people that have storefronts and they use that color palette as they're decorating inside their building, or the price tags on their products have different colors to help keep them separated, but it's the same colors in their palette, so you're still maintaining that consistency. It just gives you a little more variety when you're dealing with those multiple products or doing things like signage and flyers and things like that. It just gives you a few more colors to work with, so it makes the designs that you're doing, I don't know, kind of a little more exciting, a little more eye-catching, instead of just using those basic couple colors that you have. But again, you stay on that palette because it's still your consistency. I've seen people create color palettes in Canva, and you can also ask, if you hire someone, ask them to create a color palette for you. Now, when I'm working with a client, I tend to get pretty in depth with them if I can. I try to get to know them and really understand what they're thinking, because I really want to represent them in the work that we're doing. I mean, if you're doing the work yourself, I encourage you to consider some of these things we've been talking about as you work on your brand. And we've talked about this part before. You are your brand, especially if you're a solopreneur. So putting some of your identity in your logo is actually a really great move. You want it to be about you and your business. So think about what you really want and like and how that ties to your business. And this is something you can tackle yourself, especially with apps like Canva. But I actually truly recommend hiring someone who can help you create a truly unique look for your business. A freelance artist or even another small business is not that hard to find. The prices are actually really reasonable, and it can really be worth that investment because it can give you an end result that you really want. All right, we're going to say it one more time because it's that important. Consistency is the key to growing your brand. It takes time to build a solid reputation and a solid brand. Don't rush it. Don't try to change things because you feel your growth is too slow. Your business will grow and evolve, but your logo should remain consistent. Continuing to change your look will make it harder for your customers to find you. Now look, there's a time and a place to change or update a logo, but let yourself get a foothold in your market before you make any drastic changes. Usually the life of a logo is probably 3 to 5 years, so you need to keep it consistent during that time. After that, maybe it might need an update, but that could just be a new font or a change in the colors. Maybe it does need a complete change. But what I recommend is if you reach that point, take time to really evaluate your needs. Look at why you're making that decision. Why am I looking to change this? Even look at if the market has changed, and just make sure that you're making the decision for the right reasons. I get it. It may feel like this logo is growing tired. You're thinking, I have seen this thing 100 times already. We need to change it. But that's for you. It's just growing in the minds of your customers. Did you know it takes up to 12 touch points for a potential customer to really see you? So using that logo consistently all the time in all the things that you do will start to plant that seed, and people will start to see you. Plant that seed and then let it grow. You don't plant your garden and then dig it up so you can see how it's doing, do you? It's the same with your brand. Let it get out there. Let it start to grow and take hold and become strong just like you are. And as it grows and people start to recognize you, your business will follow. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and that it helped you in some way. Make sure and like and rate and do all the things for our podcast. And of course, check out the show notes for links or any other important information. If you're looking for guidance in your journey, you can head over to my website, ballyhoobridge.com. There, you can choose a time for a free 30-minute clarity call. In the meantime, don't forget to take care of yourself. Until next time.